Hey, how's it going, artists? It's Wallet here again. I know it's been a while since last. I've been doing a bunch of work with the students in my cinematic design course, a bunch of Evenant work. I've been creating artworks and music, you name it. It's also a really great summer so far here in Sweden, even with the whole corona situation going on. Now, I made a painting yesterday, and it took me about 1.5 hours to make, so we'll be going through that process today. And I've seen this channel grow so much every day, so thank you so much for subscribing. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and I hope you enjoy what I do as well. Now, just a quick thing before we head into the walkthrough. So we've been building a really awesome platform for Evenant. It's gonna have chats and groups, and you can take art courses in there. We're gonna have challenges and contests and you name it. So check that out as well somewhere here in the description. All right, enough of the niceties. So grab a Coke, coffee, or whatever it is that you're drinking, and let's start painting. All right then, guys, so let's get started on this painting process right here. So we're gonna make this painting that you see in front of you, and it started off by just like a regular speed painting type thing. I didn't really know exactly where I was going, but yeah, we're gonna check it out inside this walkthrough. So I start off with a canvas 3000 by 2000, and as usual, I like to start by just making the background a little bit darker. So I start by cropping it first, making it a little bit more cinematic. And I'm hitting Command L or Control L and making it kind of grayish. And now hitting Control B and making it a bit blue, so I have some background to just get started with. Now, there's many ways of starting a painting. You know, there, as I teach you in my courses and my tutorials, you know, I sometimes switch it up. I do that a lot. Just sometimes I want to start by you know, the S3 method, where I just do abstract shapes and go from there. But right now I just head straight into painting right away, because everything kind of follows the same sort of process, because you're just putting down shapes and putting down different things on the canvas, and then they will pop out. Because I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do here. I knew I wanted some sort of like rocky, kind of like dramatic type scene. And so now I'm just I'm using this brush with a little bit of color dynamics on it. You can just go to brush settings and do that, and you can check out these brushes that you see right here in the Evenant platform. So you can check out that and download that for your own art. So as you can see, I'm really staying loose and just putting down some shapes. Sometimes I do this entire process in one layer, but yeah, right now I just decided to make more layers and make it easier on myself when I want to add some separation and manipulate the painting a bit. So this intro kind of like start here is all about experimentation. You want to try out a bunch of different stuff, see what comes out of it. Because I still don't know what I want, but I kind of had this idea of having like super bright light from the sky, and then some floating rocks, or maybe like a huge monster or something in the background there, kind of hidden by the mist. And I'm just putting down some brush marks still. Blending in some of the colors and adding in the big shapes. So this was the big colossus or something that I thought I was gonna make. Just erasing out, painting in, and seeing what shapes can come out. And this kind of looks like a big, I don't know, like a rock crab or something like that. You never really know what you're gonna get when you follow this type of method of painting. So up there in the navigator looks pretty cool. You know, you can definitely make this into a painting where it's a big rocky crab or something like that. But I decided to go a different direction. I'm just playing around with some other shapes and seeing what can come out of it. So now I was thinking this kind of looming gorilla or something like that. And that's the fun thing about painting digitally. Like, you don't have to stick to just one idea or one design. You can really go all out and try out a bunch of different stuff. And you can do that with traditional as well, but it doesn't really have the same effect and takes way longer. Because this entire painting took about 1.5 hours. So now I thought that background could be a bit more like a mountain or something like that. And I'm always thinking about the design principles that I teach in cinematic design. It's always about finding a pleasing composition, creating good balance inside of the painting and harmony with itself. It's very important to keep those things in mind. And so right now I'm just making a new layer. I thought maybe this could be like a bright grassy field or something, like a circle, and the sun would come from the left or something pretty dramatic like that. And then finally I thought it was a bit too happy. You know, it doesn't really look the way that I wanted it. This is not supposed to be like a super happy and bright scene, so you know, I'm just thinking about things, and here I started to think about that floating rock idea. And the same thing here. Here I'm thinking about the proportion, that kind of design principle, where you don't want things to be identically big. You want to have something like, you know, 80% big shapes, maybe 50% or 15% medium shapes, and then just 5% small shapes. It will ensure that you get a really nice and pleasing proportion. And this is the good thing about having several layers. You can just cut out and paint out and do a bunch of stuff in there without worrying too much about messing that up. There's definitely some pros and cons to painting on just one layer or several. And I usually like painting on one layer just because of the artistic aspect of it. Like what you put down, you know, make more confident strokes and be more confident in your painting. But this time I wanted to have some control over what I'm putting down. So you can see up there in the navigator, I'm always looking up there just to see if the composition makes sense. And so I have proper flow and dynamic in the scene, and proper rhythm as well. So you see these rocks are floating upwards, and that creates a nice sense of rhythm in the painting. So these are things that I don't consciously keep in mind all the time, but I'm usually just painting away. And since I've done this a lot, it kind of sticks with you what looks good and what doesn't, and you know how to continue a painting from a sketch form. So here I'm just making the background a little bit more bluish, pushing it a bit more into the back, or magenta. Again, thinking about the big, medium, small type design principle there. And you know, I'm having these foreground elements, and I want things to recede into the distance. So I'm always thinking also about the atmospheric perspective and how things are going back into the distance, both in terms of foreshortening and also in terms of atmospheric perspective and regular perspective as well. I'm always kind of just keeping in mind what type of perspective this is. Like putting down a bunch of grids and stuff like that, I think that can hinder you a little bit once you're in this stage where you're just sketching and having fun, trying out your ideas. Just adding in a bit of texture there. So I'm not using too many photos in this painting. I'm just using, I think, one or two. I think two photos, like some rocks in the end or something like that. But I'm mostly just staying, I guess, traditional digital painting. So now I wanted to make some grass. And the color scheme of this will change a little bit as we go. So right now it's mostly like bluish, magenta, kind of gray. And adding in some of that, like you see how gray it is if you look there in the Coolers plugin there. Staying very muted. And that gives it a sense of seriousness. A sense of realism. So if you want more realism in your paintings, try to limit the amount of saturated colors that you're using. And I thought that part to the left there was a little bit too complex. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is to try to simplify your paintings, simplify what you're doing and the general idea you want to bring out. Both in terms of shapes and also your composition and stuff, so, because simple is really great. So you see there, I'm using some saturated colors. That's okay, you know, but it's still not too saturated. And this is the great thing about layers, you know, I can just take it around and see if I like it small or big, or because small was pretty cool as well. I thought that gave it a nice sense of space. And there, I just copied it over. I think it's Control J or Command J. And finding some good position for some more rocks. And of course you want to keep in mind to not have things too repetitive. Like if it's the exact same shape, it will look unnatural. But repetition is another design principle to have things to create some sort of harmony inside of the painting. You want to always try to kind of have the same elements, like they feel like they're in the same universe. I mean, you can go kind of crazy and do a bunch of weird stuff, but make sure that you still obey the most fundamental design principles. At least in the beginning, then you can start breaking them and trying out a bunch of cool stuff like that. But you can make it easier on yourself and just start painting in a simple way. I am opening up the design course again, the cinematic design course. That's going to be next month when we're launching the new Evenant platform. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more about these design principles and a lot of that stuff. It's really a great course with a lot of great results so far from my students. So here I just made the background a little bit darker. I wanted that light that I was thinking about in the before to really shine through here and create a really dramatic atmosphere. So you see, I'm not impervious to changing things. And you also see that I'm using kind of the same brush, most of the time. I'm not going around and changing brush all the time. Even the eraser is the same. But of course I do change it every now and then, like right now. And this is a smudge tool. So you'll see me later using a little bit more of the mixer brush as well. Mixer brush is great for creating clouds and sort of disappearing some of the edges. You don't want to have sharp edges everywhere. You want to create some sort of softness and preserve the really sharp edges to where you want the eyes to go for your audience. So here I'm making a new layer, and I thought I'd make a little character there, because the story is another really fundamental part of art, or music as well. We're trying to create stories, and storytelling is really it's a skill to keep practicing. How can you tell stories with your paintings and not just like a painting of a tree somewhere. I mean, it's nice to tell a little bit more of your visions and your stories. So up there in the navigator, starting to look pretty cool. Started to like this composition. Leads the eye in pretty nicely as well. You can see how the rocks on the left are hanging in, and they're all kind of tilting into the center of the composition. And you can find all these brushes in the Evenant brush pack if you haven't already downloaded that. So you see here, I made a new layer, and I just like made those brush strokes go up, and I thought that looked a little bit like a geyser, which was pretty cool. Like something is really spewing out of the earth and sort of falling down with the droplets. Now here's a good thing to check references. I didn't really do that, but I was just thinking like how would that look, and how would I paint that? I'm always thinking about that when I go out and travel or just do random stuff. I'm looking at stuff and like, oh, that looks pretty cool. How would I paint that? Like how would I build that up inside of Photoshop? And so that mindset will help you become much better at art, because you're not just ignoring these things, you're actually thinking about them consciously. And you see, that kind of looks like a geyser, I guess. Now the mixer brush is really great here, so you can see I'm using that right now. Just sampling from that layer and painting in, and you see how soft and nice it becomes and sort of blends together with the rest. So I thought these clouds or these geysers gave it a really cool dramatic effect together with this light here. So, I mean, I am going in a bit more to detailing and stuff, but that's because this part here is pretty important, This will catch people's eyes. So I really want to get that down pretty soon, like right now, because I want these edge lights, these rim lights, to really catch that super bright skylight, and also have some differences to these lights, so they don't all look, so you create a little bit more of a three dimensionality. You're gonna see later. I'm gonna create some more rocks and then put them more in the like behind, I guess behind the light, so they shine up much more. With just a few strokes, I managed to get pretty convincing looking three-dimensional shape there. So now I locked the layer. You can see up there, that button there, the checker button. Just locking it, and if I paint on it, it will only do that layer. So here I made another layer behind there, just adding a few more rocks to give it a really atmospheric feel, that there's floating rocks behind this light as well. And you see here, I'm switching up the proportion, how big they are. And I thought that looked pretty cool. I usually say like don't use complete white, but you can if you know what you're doing, if that makes sense. Complete white and complete black can be really powerful and overpower a lot of other stuff. You want to stay away from that range until the very end, but right now I know that I want this to be like really blown out and really powerful there. So I'm okay with painting a bit of that super bright stuff. And of course you can always take it back in the end. Like you see here, I'm just taking it back a bit, keeping the rim lights completely white. And then going in and adding some of those cracks and the bumps. And this is part of module 4 actually of my cinematic design course. Just creating or rendering materials, where if you know just a few things, you can, like about materials and how light and shadow works, you can paint anything really, any material. You build them up all in the same way, using different maps, I guess you can call it, like bump and reflection and things like that. So here I thought, like, okay, this guy looked pretty boring, just standing there not doing anything. So I thought he could be the one controlling these rocks. Or girl. And now I wanted to add some little bit more interesting color, like really take the eye in there. And so I added these small purplish spots there. And yeah, you should probably do better than me when it comes to saving. I still haven't saved this. I kind of get swept away, getting into a flow state. You want to do that, try to get into the flow state. And you do that automatically by just enjoying painting art and not worrying about the result or anything like that. You just paint because it's fun and things usually solve themselves. And so here I'm creating a bit of flow into the scene. Like if I just did completely straight edges there, it would be a bit flat. So here's where you want to introduce a little bit more perspective. See how the lines sort of go into him. Kind of looks a bit like, I don't know, it's like pulling us in there and indicating more of the perspective of this this shot here. So I'm still playing around with the composition, seeing what works. But I like this one. I think that looks pretty cool. And if you look at this entire painting, I mean, you see how simple it is. It's just a mountain in the back, just some sky, bit of rocks, and that's really it. You know, it's not too much stuff. And that's how you should approach your paintings, like not overthink them too much. Focus on the most important elements, and once you get that down, then you're all good. So here I'm using that soft brush just to give some more volume to the whole scene and make that bright light even stand out even more. I'm just using the lasso tool, cutting out that part there, because I actually had them in the same layer before. Oh, actually, I just make a new layer, which is fine. This is how I paint usually when I do everything in one scene. I use the lasso tool a lot, or marquee tool, and just kind of paint in between different elements. And you see how that kind of separates this foreground mountain rock thing, cliff, with the background. A little bit extra atmospheric perspective there. And just seeing if I can make that a little bit more blue. And there, you know, I saw in the navigator that it almost looked like a god ray or something, which looked pretty cool, but I thought that was a little bit wrong for the direction of this piece, and I wanted to keep it simple again. So just locking the layer again and then adding a little bit more texture to the grasses here. So, you know, I'm thinking also about light, where you see there how I'm kind of just like choosing some parts where I have a little bit more light grasses. This will also improve the dimensionality, or the three-dimensionality of your scene. And here I'm kind of confused with the layers, trying to paint. But that layer is in front there, so. And just a few of these breakups will really help it look more natural and not too, you know, too dull. Making it a bit more saturated now, just in a few parts there. That will attract the eye. It's okay to have some parts being super saturated. Or that's not even super saturated, it's like middle of the range. But it still looks very saturated because of the surrounding. You know, color theory is all about relative colors around it. Still thinking about that directionality there. And so I'm just jumping back and forth and starting to render out some parts, because I'm pretty happy with this composition. I know this is where it will probably end up in the end. So now I can go in and make the rocks look a bit more rock-like, and the grasses and the clouds and stuff like that. So here I actually merged everything. It's Command Control Shift E, or what is that? Alt Control Shift E, I think, on PC, Windows. And yeah, now I'm just painting over the entire thing. But I actually do go back, and I still have the layers, so I can still like select them or do selections from them. I mean, this could be a finished piece, you know. It's don't have to take it much further than that, and it's only been 30 minutes. Or I think 40 minutes, since I sped this up a little bit. Thought of making the character a bit bigger and maybe change the size, because I thought that kind of, I don't know, it felt a bit heavy on the left side. So you see, this is the the issue when you're doing just one layer. It's totally fine. You can just erase that part out. So you see there, I'm just erasing it. And now I can actually move that character. So you find these nifty ways of working inside of Photoshop. And I'm changing the brush style a lot. You know, I'm just holding down Shift, right clicking, and then I can choose normal or linear dodge or overlay or multiply. So now I'm just using normal. And I'm actually gonna use one of my photo bash libraries for this guy later. Just gonna pick like a medieval soldier or something and then paint over that. You shouldn't feel that it's cheating to use photos, not at all. It's just a tool for you to tell your stories and create your concepts. And it also makes you a better painter, because you start putting in these photos and you start seeing, okay, this is how it should look like. And so you take that knowledge from simply incorporating these photos, where otherwise it would just be like you're guessing, and you know, you always have to use reference. And making a new layer there, making sure this scepter thing is brighter. So here I had the idea, like, or at least later, to make a really like glowing thing from the bottom, being that same color. So this guy is really powerful, or this scepter is really powerful. So now I'm just evaluating the painting, switching it back and forth and seeing if I can do something else. So I actually take that away, that merged layer there, just because I thought I could make a little bit more stuff with the layers before I merge everything together. So I just make a new layer here and adding some darkness there, and I'm making the character smaller again. I think small characters usually make the scenes a bit bigger. So here I'm actually going into this stock photo library from PhotoBash. It's called Medieval Infantry. And so you see this this guy here, the lighting is a little bit off, so I'm gonna have to paint over that and make sure that it looks like part of the same scene. But I like the robe that he had, and I thought it looked pretty cool. So even now I'm not really zooming in, still keeping it a little bit zoomed out. I am zooming in a little bit now, but But yeah, so now I'm just painting over it, changing up the stock photo a bit. And I'm trying to get the same pose as last time. That he's holding up that scepter. I don't spend too much time working on the characters in my landscapes, unless it's like a strong feature of the painting or the illustration. Then I do work a bit more on that, but for something like this, you know, some small thing, it doesn't really matter too much. I'm kind of staying loose and giving it what it needs for the scene. And I'm mainly just using shapes. Not doing too much else with details and textures and stuff like that. Just painting that in again. And I think it looks pretty cool there in the navigator. So again here, it's very important when it comes to anatomy and human proportion and things like that to, you know, get that right, because humans really see that very well. Like we see faces and poses and stuff like that, and they can look very stiff if they're painted a bit wrong. So do spend some time practicing that. And you don't have to get it right the first time. You can use some photos and get some inspiration from there, but yeah, practice makes progress. There's no perfect here. Just giving that scepter a bit more interesting look. I really think this could be a cool, maybe a scene in a game or something like that. Like, yeah, like this guy is traveling and finding the scepter somewhere in the mountains and starting to lift stuff. So here I'm getting that idea, right? To start painting that that purplish sort of, I guess, foundation here. And I'm starting with the rocks itself, so they get some of that reflection from some bright purplish source down there. And I like that effect that it gives. Very, very dramatic. But of course, it doesn't look part of the same scene right now if we don't have any light from the bottom. So we're going to do that right after this. And I'm not going too over the top with this. So I'm just making a new layer there, and starting with this. But I'm noticing that this layer here needs to be cut out, because I actually did them in the same layer. So I'm just taking the lasso tool, cutting that out, doing layer via cut, and now they're on their own layers there. So it's very good practice to keep them separated, these layers. Make sure you have what's in the front be higher up, and then the background and stuff like that could be further back. So it makes sense logically, like the distance. So you see here, I'm just painting in these things, and it's starting to look pretty cool up there in the navigator. I started to like that. It looks like part of the same scene. And that geyser is in front of there, so I'm gonna have to fix that. Some linear dodge there. And it's a bit too bright purple, so I'm gonna actually dial that back a little bit. make the character a bit smaller. Really trying to find that geyser layer, and there I find it. So I'm making it a bit more magenta, a bit more bluish purple. I thought that looked better than this pink. So I'm going back here, and now I'm going to use some stuff from the Mossy Flatlands. It's another stock photo from Photobash. These are really useful, and I like this sort of strange look that this Mossy Flatlands had. So I'm going to just take that in there and just cut out a small piece of that for the foreground. And I'm thinking about the light as well, that it comes from up and in front. So it kind of matches the painting I already have. It's good practice to do that. So here I'm clipping it down to that layer under there. Just merging them together and then clipping that up there. And so now I want to warp it to make it look a bit more like it's receding into the distance. So it feels coherent and, you know, part of the scene. As soon as something looks off, you know, like it doesn't really belong to the same painting or something like that, you should just kind of step away, step back a bit and see how you can fix that. How can you make it more coherent or more sort of cohesive with the entire, either the colors or the values. Here I'm taking that bright white light and just adding some bounce lights there. Some brushes. And I'm just painting over, you know, making sure that it looks painterly and doesn't look like just pure photo. I think that's a common mistake for beginners and for my students, is that when they're starting to incorporate these matte painting techniques, it starts looking like there's just a photo there and it kind of looks a little bit out of place. So do keep in mind to try to blend it together. Use some mixer brush, use some regular brushes, and paint it in and blend it in so it appears that it's part of the same unity. So here's a photo that I thought could work. It's just this cliff side here. I'm gonna use that for for the cliff there. Just doing some color balance, matching the colors. Same thing here, just warping it, making sure it fits. And it's mostly for texture, but it can also give some nice form to the existing form. It can give some nice happy accidents. So it's quite subtle, but it's still there, you know. And I'm actually going in and checking out these different layer styles. So doing soft light there and just making it a bit brighter. So there I just wanted to make it a little bit more like the right side. And same thing here, I'm just trying to achieve the same harmony within the painting. Using the same values, the same type of textures, same brushes. Otherwise it would just look too out of place. And I kind of like that. So I'm actually copying over that and then doing the same thing on the other side. So I'm sort of just pasting that in there. and matching it to the form. Same thing here, just blending it in. And I like these brushes, they're really cool for small grasses and things like that. So here I'm just trying out the background, like making sure, giving it a different form. And I kind of like this, like this sort of spike. But I thought that was a little bit too distracting from what I'm trying to show here with this piece. I'm just making it very simple. Just some hill in the background there, and then you just focus on these rocks here. And you see this big mountain in the background. It doesn't need to have a bunch of details. Like, this is enough on its own, because it's so far back and the details kind of get away. Just smudging it out a bit, and I'm gonna use more mixer brush. This brush that you see here, together with the mixer brush, is really great. And I'm erasing with the same brush. Always keeping in mind that directionality, not too much horizontal or circular motions, but more upwards, so the whole scene lifts up. So there I'm dialing back that purple stuff, and I think it looks better now. If you check up there in the navigator. I think I do overdo it just a little bit with this, but yeah, anything goes. It's art, it's painting. There are a lot of objective, good looking things in art, but there's some things where you can just go a little bit the extra mile and just play around with your own visions. So yeah, I'm just painting over there, giving it some bounce light there. It's still very simple details, very simple shapes. Always making it part of the same scene. And the directions are going downwards to the right, so we're led into the scene and not like out or something. Refining these rocks here. Spending more time on these because they're an important focal point. And you see these crevices and these like small things that catch the rock. It really makes it more three-dimensional that way when I paint that in. I want to give them a bit more love, a bit more focus. It really does a lot to do that. Because you see where it's not hit by the light, there's not too much stuff going on there. I will add some more in later stages, but right now I'm just focusing on the most important aspects of the lighting here. Same thing here, keeping it very vertical with these geyser clouds here. And there's all sorts of edges, or like there's three main edges. So there's hard edges, and there's soft edges, and there's lost edges. And you can see here that there's some soft edges on the edges of the geysers, and then inside the geysers there's lost edges, like there's no real edge. And then there's like hard edges with the rocks there floating and the character and stuff like that. And you want to keep these in mind when thinking about your focal points and trying to give some space and breathing air, for the viewers. If you have hard edges everywhere, it won't look that good. It will look too overwhelming. And here I'm doing some bounce light. So you see how that kind of makes it more part of the same scene. If I just keep it very, flat and not work too much with the bounce light and thinking about the global illumination, then I'm missing out on making it look more part of the same scene. So that's definitely something to think about. Here I'm just taking away some of the edges. Actually took that away a bit. Still keeping it vertical. Just pushing the lighting there. And I'm adding some God rays and stuff. I always overdo this. So I think I take away most of that. It just becomes too much, too dramatic. And since I did that on the same layer, that's not too good because I kind of changed my mind there. And yeah. I actually lost some of what I did there before. So I'm just going to where I started with that stuff. So here I'm just using overlay and pushing the values a bit here. A great thing to do is value check your paintings. I don't do that here, but maybe I can create another video where I'm just doing that, like showing you how you can value check your paintings to make sure that the values work, because values are way more important than colors. They tell everything, really. Colors just tell you, something, but you can still see everything with value and discern what the scene is and what the concept is. It's one of the it's the last design element. First one being shapes. That's the most important. And then you have form to describe that shape. You have texture. You have depth and space. And then finally you have the color. So just adding in some small elements here and there, keeping that proportional design principle in mind. And here I wanted this face to be a bit more bright because it's actually facing up where it's brighter than the stuff below. So I'm just pushing the lighting a little bit more there. Still keeping it kind of artistic, a bit painterly. Because you see, now I have most of the colors already set, so I don't need to go in and picking colors, from the color wheel there. You can just start picking around the painting. And this is more of a tertiary color scheme. Still kind of simple. It's mostly this bluish gray, and then there's the purple and the green. And the purple and the green, they complement each other very nicely. They're complementary. While the blue is a bit more of a support to the blue. Or is it the green, I mean? So there I just made another layer, merged everything together, and starting to paint over. And you see here, I'm actually taking this layer and I'm duplicating it in here, because I wanted them to be a bit darker and pop out a bit more. But I remember that I lost the details there. So I'm actually just gonna take the selection. I'm gonna hold down Command and click the layer, you can see here. And so I get the selection there instead. And so I can just go back to the merge layer and make it darker. So that's the cool thing about having these layers still under there. You can actually use them again. You can duplicate different parts of the project into different areas if you want to continue, building some small continuations here and there. So just tweaking it a bit before going into the final rendering part, just adding some more details and stuff like that. the final S of the S3 method. Shape, sculpt, and season. Now we start with the shapes there. So this is actually I make an overlay layer, and then I add noise. I blur it out a bit, and I just take that back because that gives it a nice filmic look, so it doesn't look too digital, you know. Merge it all together, do some color balance. And it's great to step back from this stage, because I actually did that for like half an hour, and then I came back, and I realized some things that I could improve, some things that I could take away, or more add, I guess. So you see here I added another layer there. It's like a little bit of some color and a color layer style, and very low opacity. And that actually gives it a nice color variation, just a little bit. I usually do this. It's more of my kind of signature thing that I do. I don't see many other artists do this, but you can try it out yourself. It just adds a little bit of a cool color variation to the whole painting. I just do kind of random blues and greens and everything, really. And some purists might say that that's not the best thing to do, but I don't care. We're making art here. So here, after stepping back, I'm actually noticing that I have too few very small shapes. So like I said before, you know, we always start with shapes, and the proportions here were there were too many medium shapes. There's not enough small shapes here, so I decided to add a bit more of that, you know, repetition, where we have the same type of shapes, the same type of forms, but much smaller. So 5%, you know, of the painting should have a bunch of small elements. And you'll see how that makes it look much better. Still keeping the lighting in mind. And they're very simple, you know, it's just like blobs of paint and then some light from above and some light from below. Starting with big shapes, one color. Keeping the direction in mind, the rhythm. And making sure that I don't make them the same sizes. So you see how fast it goes to just create a shape into a form that actually fits inside the scene. And I will improve the other rocks, the ones that are in the focal point there. Just adding some crevices more to that and some form. Some cross-sectional lines, you know, that's a way to indicate form. There's texture and there's light. And there's cross-sections, you know, where it's just lines that indicates how the form is formed. And then making that edge sort of disappear there. So it's all about small details from here on out. I'm gonna add some small compositional things when I step back and look at the balance of the whole scene. See what I mean in a sec. So you see there, you know, I just thought that the left side had too little weight to it, so I added a very similar shape to that one on the right there. Start with a big blob of paint and just very quickly like that, and you create a small cliff. I'm blending it in again. And you see the edges here. I'm trying to not make them too, too flat, I guess, and just erasing a little bit of that edge, adding a little bit more of a irregularity to it, because nature is never perfect in that way. It's perfect because it's imperfect. And you see there, just making some very simple shapes, adding in a little bit of that light, and that's all you need, and you have a little rock there. And since these are on the fringes of the painting, it doesn't need to be too detailed. If it is too detailed, it will actually take away from the main focal points. So, you could call this painting finished, but yeah, it's really up to you, it's, I think that's a problem that many beginners have, that they don't know when to call something finished or how to know, and it's finished when you say it is, I could call this finished, or I could keep working on it, and there's nothing wrong with keep working on it, because I like painting and it's fun, so... Just making the scepter a little bit more stick out. And adding some rim light there for the character. Just small things like that, it really adds to the whole sense of coherency. Zooming out, seeing if I like it, what I want to change. You can get kind of blind if you just sit and stare at the same painting for hours. So it's always good to step back and do something else for a while and come back to it. Or just zoom out and see what you might not like about it, and then find a solution for that. Or flipping the screen as well. Usually helps. So now I'm cropping the painting, because I thought it was a bit too high. And I don't have a system for this, I just do what the painting needs. So I thought this looked way more cinematic, like a movie. So here I'm just continuing working on these rocks, giving them a bit more details. And I'm gonna start adding in these nice cross sections to indicate form. Just a few of those lines really help. It's just like I said before, one way of showing form is these lines, and then on the edges there, the edges of the cracks will actually catch some light, so it's good to paint a bit of that in. And see instantly there, it looks much better now. Same thing here, just creating a bit more crevices and cracks and stuff. This makes them look less flat. You want to be kind of smart about doing this, think a little bit extra on what it is you're painting. How would that look? Like, why are there cracks in there? How would it look for the form if it's round? Just adding some more of these cool looking things. Catching the light. I'm thinking now, like, this could even be like a golem or something that has a bunch of floating rocks for the body. That would be pretty cool. Could make arms or something, because that rock there on the top there looks a little bit like a face. And these are ideas that you find along the way, and there's nothing wrong with actually just going with that and starting to paint it that way. I could easily have done that, but yeah, I was happy with this. So starting to end, or coming to the end of the painting. It's very small, seasonal, or seasoning. Adding some more bounce lights and a few more small things, and yeah, coming up to the end here. So I'm just doing linear dodge, and I have it all in one layer, and just pushing the values a little bit more. I think that really adds to it. If you check up there in the navigator, it really pops out there in the middle. Looks like it's glowing. So we're gonna do more cool challenges with stuff like this, like make something glow, or create these floating rocks, or a bunch of cool stuff that I have planned for the Evenant platform. I'm gonna have the groups in there, so it's gonna be kind of like a Facebook thing, but not Facebook. You're not gonna get distracted from a bunch of other stuff. It's actually gonna be more about art, and collaborate with others and learn, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So here I made a sharpen mask, or a sharpen layer. Just erased some of that because I don't want to have sharp everywhere, just in some parts. So a stamp visible there. Some final tweaks to the painting. And yeah, that's gonna be it. So I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough here of this painting. And again, do check out the new Evenant platform that's coming out. And if you're watching this later on, then definitely check it out and join, and can have a lot of fun. A bunch of live Q&As and some challenges and contests and stuff. And there's courses in there as well. And yeah, that'll be it for now. So hope to see you very soon. Good luck practicing, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy. Bye-bye.